relationship platform once again on this week episode. My name is still Caleb's, your relationship coach. My name have not changed. And today we want to continue from where we stopped last week. Last week was so awesome. And thank you for every one of you that have been bringing feedback, those of you that have been making comments, those of you that have been going to the YouTube channel to feed yourself with powerful, insightful informations that will transform that, and I believe it is impacting your marital life. So it's another Wednesday, is another live streaming on F.I.N.D relationship platform, and we want to continue from where we stopped last week. Don't forget that this is part 2 of marriage cycle, the 2 of marriage cycle. And last week we were able to establish the fact that marriage is a relationship of different phases. It goes from one phase to another. And we were able to establish that there are 3 major phases that your marriage, every of your marriage, have to go through. And the euphoria phase, the shifting phase, and the harmonized phase. The reason why this is very significant, and I believe that it is striking so many marriages, especially those of you that have been making comments and those of you that have been asking questions. The reason why I believe that it is really getting on your marriage is because I believe that this is a revolutionary tool that if you engage it, you disengage divorce. I've said it many times here on this platform that divorce is not an event. It doesn't just happen. It have to be a violation of certain principles before ever that you begin to click on divorce. So that's exactly what this platform is all about. Even if you're single, this platform is going to help you to figure out who your spouse ought to be. Because if you don't get it right from the foundation level, you are going to have problem. I believe that so many marriages crashes before ever the wedding is over, because of foundations. And that's why we took us some time in this channel to look at the foundations, decisions, and every other aspect. Get back to Life Mending World Mission, Life Mending World Mission channel in YouTube, and you will see episode 1 to 10. And each of those episodes, they carry something that can build you up from point 0 of your relationship, and we are gradually coming up. So today we want to look at a marriage cycle once again. But before I get into the second phase, which is the major phase that we are going to look into today, I remember that last week I did say that the first phase, which is the euphoria phase, is the easiest aspect of your marriage. The hardest aspect of your marriage is in your shifting phase. And unfortunately, many marriages don't get to that point before they disintegrate. If you see marriages that have gone into harmonized stage, it is marriage that out of commitment that have done a lot of work on the level of shifting phase. And I'm going to give you details on how to deal with the shifting phase of your marriage, because I believe that if you can get into what that phase require, you are going to really end up in the harmonized stage of your marriage. Now follow me, let me read the scripture. I'm going to read the scripture right now that we open up to the principle that the cardinal principle that will help you to navigate in the phase of the shifting phase. I'm reading from the book of John, St. John, chapter 13. I'm reading from verse 1. It says, now before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew that his hour was come, that he should depart out of this world unto the Father, having loved his own which were in the world, he loved them unto the end. I want you to underscore or underline that particular phrase, he loved them unto the end, because that's exactly a very powerful principle that we have to deal with today. He loved his own unto the end. Then he get down to verse 38, and supper being ended, the devil having now put into the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simeon's son, to betray him, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he was come from God, and he went to God. He riseth from supper, and laid aside his garments, and took a towel and hid himself. Now, I brought you into this particular scriptural passage because of two powerful things that I want you to get from this particular place. Number one, the Bible said that Jesus loved his own unto the end. He loved his own unto the end. He did not love them halfway. His love did not run out as he was loving them. He loved them unto the end. The second thing I want you to see is what kind of people were these particular people that Jesus loved unto the end. You can see that Judas Iscariot was prominently mentioned among the people that Jesus loved to the end. Now look at Judas Iscariot. Ever before Jesus selected him, he knew that he was of the devil. He knew that this one is the one that will betray him. He knew the responsibility that Judas will take in taking him to the cross. But the word of God said that he loved them. He loved him to the end. He loved them to the end. He loved Judas to the end. Irrespective of the fact that Judas was an enemy, irrespective of the fact that Judas was the vessel that we crucify him, he loved him to the end. The second person that is in that group is Peter. Peter was the one that we denied Jesus 3 times in the front of a maid and swear and take an oath that he never knew Jesus. And now he loved him to the end. This is very significant to us because he loved them to the end. He loved Judas, he loved Peter on to the end. Why? Why is this very significant? It's very significant because the greatest challenge that you will ever have in loving people is when you have known people. It is easy to love people that you don't know. Let me say that again. It is easy to love people that you don't really know. I'm not talking about people you assume to have known. I'm talking about people who have really manifested who they are, and their manifestation is not in agreement of what you think that they are. Now, Jesus loved Judas after he had known Judas. He loved Peter after he had known Peter. The challenge of love is loving people after you have known them. I want you to keep that principle at the back of your mind, because as we get into the shifting phase of your marriage, you're going to find out that we need this kind of love that will love people after you have known them. It's easy to fall in love with someone that you don't know or someone that you assume that you know. But when you have known somebody, that is when the challenge of love begin to come into play. Jesus loved them to the end after he had known who they truly are in their heart. Now, having said that, let's get back to the cycle of marriage. We have identified already 3 levels, 3 cycles of marriage. If you don't, if you don't understand it, you go to episode 10. In episode 10, I was able to look at the first cycle of marriage, and I did a good job in opening it up. That you have 3 levels of it. The first level is the euphoria phase. The euphoria phase, we say that is the phase of irresponsibility. It is the phase of irresponsibility because right at that particular point, you are fantasizing. You have created an animation of who you think that your spouse is. It is all about the high emotionalized picture of your spouse that was created in your imagination, empowered by the forces of your emotion, and idolized in your fantasizing attitude of your mind. It's not real. We said that last week. It's not real. It is all about the photograph, the imagination, the imaginary copy of your spouse that you hold up in your heart. But now, the end of that phase, euphoria phase, comes when that particular picture begins to be provoked. And I told you that last week that is a significant point for you to understand that you need to go to the next phase. I'm going to say that again because it's important that you understand that the conflict you have is that who you think or who you imagined your spouse to be when you met them. Remember you've been waiting for this guy for a very long time. You've been waiting for this man. You've been waiting for this woman. You were waiting for something that you didn't know. And when this guy stepped in, you automatically say, this is him. Or you said, this is her. All of a sudden, you begin to assume that this one is all about the photograph that you have created in your imagination. You've not known this guy, but you assume that you know him. You know him. You've not known her. It is all about the imaginations, what you have been imagining, the kind of woman that you think that this is the woman that is going to be my wife. This is all the fantasies that you've been building up ever before you met your spouse. All of a sudden, this guy or this lady step in, and in your imagination, you believe that this is the guy. This is who he is. Remember that it is all about imaginary. You didn't make it up, but it is there as an imaginary picture of who your spouse is. You think that the lady standing before you, this is who she is. Or the guy that is standing before you, this is all about, this is who he is. But that's not the real person. It is you're in love with the imaginations of your heart. You are in love with the imaginary copy of spouse, not the real one that you are standing with. Now, all of a sudden, this guy packed into your house after the wedding in a proper setting. This guy packs into your house, or this lady packed into your house, and you begin to live now. All of a sudden, at a certain point, it might take you one day. It might take you 1 week. Some people, it might take them months. It can even go up to 2 years. I told you last week that it took me 2 years for my bubbles to be busted, for the imaginary picture of my spouse to collapse. Then you begin to see some practical expression of your physical spouse with all the flaws that you never saw when that one stepped in. All of a sudden, crises are built inside of you. Is the time you begin to question the reason for your marrying who you got married to. No, I don't think that this is who this person is. Is the time that your spouse begin to tell you, you really changed. This is not the woman I married. This is not the man I married. And your spouse is also surprised that you're saying that, because in her, she can't find or locate any time when she or he changed. He never, they are not in denial. They didn't change. Only that you did not see the flaws at that point because you were still holding up the imaginary pictures, image of who you think that your spouse is. So that's the point I call the point of provocation. Because crises are built up inside of you now. Maybe you married, you've not come to that. Don't rejoice yet. You will come to that point. You will come to that point. I guarantee you, you will come to that point. It is the point you think that the honeymoon is over. It is the point when the idiosyncrasies of your spouse begin to get to your nerves. It's the point when you begin to ask yourself, did I really make this decision to marry this particular point? Now, that particular point wherein there are crises in your mind, you begin to see what makes you regret of your decision. You begin to see things that are provoking and puncturing the bubbles, the excitement you had before ever you got into that relationship. At that point when your excitements are being questioned, your bubbles are being broken down, you begin to think, is it really me? Is it really the person I married? Is it really that and that, this and that? At that particular point is called the point of provocation. Is the point of crisis. Now, I want you to understand that how you handle your marriage at this particular point will decide whether you are going to add to the divorce rate or you are going to take that relationship into the point of harmonization. And that's why I'm here today. I'm here to help you to get over at that particular point. That point of crisis, that point of provocation, that point when you begin to regret your decision to marry who you got married to. At that particular point, it is not the time to divorce. It is not the time to break down. That particular situation is not calling for you to walk away from the relationship. It's not calling on you to break up that particular relationship. What that point is calling onto you is to get from that euphoria phase of your marriage to switch over to the shifting phase of your marriage. So there are 7 things I want to tell you. The first thing that you need to understand is the shifting phase of your marriage is the answer to the crisis you are having at the end of your euphoria phase of your marriage. The shifting phase. If you can switch over to the shifting phase of your marriage, you will find out that that switch alone is the answer to the problem you're having at that euphoria phase, because the euphoria phase is over, is finished. And that situation is inviting you to go to the next level. Now, if that is where your marriage is at this particular hour, you are getting fed up with your spouse. No, I didn't marry this person. You've come to that place where you're questioning, your joy is drying up. You are thinking, you are regretting it. You're regretting this relationship. You want to sign off. You know, the worst thing you can do at this point is to get your single friends to cancel you. The worst thing you can do at this particular point is to get people who do not understand the dynamics of marriage to speak into your life. Because the counsel they are going to give to you is not going to help you, because no man can give what they don't have. People who have come to this point and they walk away from their marriage cannot tell you how to deal with it. The only thing they are going to offer to you is to walk away, because that was how they answered the question when it was presented to them. So the next thing, listen to me, I want to help you right now. The next thing you need to do is, first of all, understand that you need to switch over to the more demanding aspect of your marriage, which is called the shifting phase. The shifting phase is the most difficult aspect of your marital life. It is more difficult because it requires a mutual commitment of the spouse and mutual responsibility taking. I'm going to say that again. The difficult aspect of the shifting phase of your marriage is the fact that it requires a mutual commitment of the spouse and responsibility taking. Now, I know a situation whereby one spouse wants the marriage, but the other spouse doesn't want the marriage. One spouse wants to keep the marriage going when they have come to this point, but the body language of the other spouse does not want the marriage. And you're asking me, what can I do at this particular hour? Because I tell you, the shifting phase will not work except there are mutual commitment and mutual responsibility taking. It's a little bit different from the euphoria, because your love in euphoria was attractive. It was all about the dynamics of what is going on in your heart. It doesn't matter what the other spouse have done. It got nothing to do with you. You are living with a spouse that you have created, the model you have created in your heart. But now you are coming to a place where the model that you have created have been deflated. And now you're standing face to face with a practical, everyday expression of the spouse before you with all the flaws that you never saw at the beginning. So what are you to do? I'm telling you right now, the first thing is switch over to the higher dimension, which is the shifting phase. And I'm saying to you, the next thing that is required for the shifting phase to work is that there have to be a mutual commitment and mutual responsibility taken. You're asking me, coach, assuming that my spouse doesn't want to go on with the marriage. I want the marriage, I want to pay the price, but my spouse's body language is saying something different. You cannot go to the next level. All that you need to do at this particular point is that if you want the marriage, you are going to pay a higher price in order to woo the attention of your spouse. And you can do it. You can do it. You can't get your spouse to make commitment or take responsibility except he is willing or she is willing to go with you to the next level. So if you're dealing with a spouse right now who doesn't want to continue with you, he wants to stop at that euphoria phase because of the provocation, all you need to do is don't walk away. Don't walk away. But it's going to put much more demand on you. Let me tell you this story. This story happened somewhere in Benin City. I think it was one of the pastors that shared this story with us. There is this man and this woman that have been married for a very long time. The man is sleeping with every woman, everything in the state, in the whole city. And he wasn't born again. He doesn't have value for God. But the wife was a child of God, born again, worshiping in a very sound church. Each time the wife would go to church, the husband would drop them off at the gate, and she would go, and he would go for his own thing, drinking, carrying women here and there. The news of his Casanova life have filled the whole city. To the embarrassment of the woman, every day, reports of it comes to her. You know what she did? This woman continued to pray for her husband and refused to give attention to the news and the messages of her husband's life coming onto her. It takes a high level of faith and sacrifice. That situation lasted for 15 good years in that city. Yet the woman was praying and believing God that I want this man. She stopped confronting the husband. She stopped talking about it. She became dead to this man's action. I know it's not easy, but you can do it. The grace of God is given unto you to do what your human ability cannot do. But one day after 15 years, the man on Saturday, while they were still having dinner, called the woman and said to her, please, can you go to the wardrobe go get me the best of my suit because my newest girlfriend is arriving on Sunday morning and I want to see my girlfriend. The woman, to the amazement of everybody, stood from the dining table, went down to the wardrobe, picked out the best suit of this man and said, honey, this one will be good for you to go. He said, no, I want the other one. The woman went back and picked the one that he wanted, ironed it, and kept it for him. Now, this particular man, that on Saturday night, on Sunday morning, while they're dressing for service, the man was dressing. All of a sudden, he said to him, he said, well, I'm driving you people to drop you in front of the church as I normally do, and I will take my journey to meet my new girlfriend. But that day was different. That Sunday morning was different. When he dropped them in front of the church, he locked up the car and followed them. It looks like movie. It looks as if it was not real. He followed them and sat down, listening to the message. When the man of God made an altar call, the man lifted his hand. The woman said, it doesn't matter. You know you're a popular person in the city. You don't need to. The man lifted up his hand, and before you know it, he had gone straight to the altar and gave his life to Christ and became a deacon of that church, and all of that nasty life was over. But don't forget that it took that woman 15 good years of praying and believing God, dying to the attitude of the husband and waiting unto God to touch this particular man. And when it finally happened, that man became a deacon and he is a pastor of that church today, and that life was over. The question is, how long can you wait for God to transform your spouse? You know, we are living in a generation of impatient. We are living in a generation of microwave results. We just want God to do it now, and if God doesn't do it now, you threaten him and you walk away from God, you change your situation. The question I want you to know, the thing I want you to know is that you can get your man back if you are ready to pay the price, if you're ready to wait on God to do it. Because for the man to get married to you or the woman to get married to you, there was an initial love, initial attraction, initial commitment that made the man or the woman to leave all other billions of people on earth and cleave unto you. So even if when you think that you no longer feel the love you felt before, anchor your confidence on the love that brought about the decision for the marriage and hold on to it for every nasty thing that you're seeing now to walk away, because if it is done, you are going to see a manifestation of the glory of God. Let me tell you something. It is better to repair an old relationship than to get a new relationship. Because the old relationship, you have known all the flaws and what to deal with. But every new relationship or new spouse comes with new problems and new devils and new challenges. And some of them you may not know or have what it takes to handle it like you did to the other one. So the first thing I want you to understand is that the phase 2, which is the shifting phase, is the answer to the crisis that you have in your euphoria state. The second thing that you need to deal with is that understand that it takes mutual commitment. Mutual commitment. If both of you are not in that place where both of you can make mutual commitment, the one who wants it most must be able to lay down and pay the price in order to get to that particular point. The third thing I want you to know in order to deal with the shifting phase of your marriage, which I said is the most difficult time, is to dismantle. The third thing, dismantle that imaginary photograph, imagery of your spouse that you created in your heart at the beginning of your relationship. You got to come to a point where you tell yourself, that is not the man that I married. You have to dismantle that in your heart. If you married a saint in your imagination, and now the saint is producing something that is contradicting, you get to dismantle that particular image. Because you cannot deal with the spouse who are full of flaws and standing before your presence while you're still carrying the imaginary photograph of him that is a saint right inside of you. You have to come to the point where you dismantle the old, that fantasized image. Because if you're still holding it, you are telling yourself, you say to yourself, well, I think that's the man I married. If anything comes in now, I'm not going to take it. No, you have to dismantle the imaginary photograph of your spouse. Look at the spouse you have with all the faults that you have and come to the point where you said, I accept you. I accept who you are. I accept you with your flaws. I accept you with your mess. I accept you the way you are, even if you don't change. Because it is in that place of acceptance that you will be able to develop the ability and the force of love that will be able to change that particular person. Don't go with Jesus and hammers and you are getting into fixing anybody, because you can't fix anybody. You can't fix anybody. You don't get into a relationship and you said, I want to fix my spouse. I want to fix my wife. I want to fix my husband. The moment that is your stance, you are going to mess up the whole of the relationship. So it is important that you accept your spouse how they are. You know the principle in the Word of God. John chapter 3 verse 16, it said, for God so loved the world and he gave his only begotten son. The world that God loved were sinners. He didn't love them as church. He loved them as the world. You got to come to a point wherein you love your spouse even though you hate what your spouse is doing. You need to separate the sin of the errors and the flaws of your spouse from the person that your spouse is, because you cannot deal with it if you don't do the separation. God loved the whole world, but yet he hates the sins that the world was committing. That's the strategy. You need to come to the place where you accept your spouse, no matter who they are, and then in that particular place, that's where it takes a kind of love. It takes agape kind of love. People need to understand that in your first phase of marriage, the dominant love was attractive love. But something has happened right now. Your fantasies and your imaginary husband has been deflected. How do you say, I no longer feel love in this relationship? I don't feel anything for you. It's right that you don't feel anything. You used to feel something, but now you don't feel anything. All you need to do to regain the love is to make decision. Your love is going to be based not on what you feel, but on your decision to love. And that is where the true love is. And that is how to dismantle that imaginary copy of your fantasized husband. The fourth thing that you need to do is put yourself in the mode of repairing your spouse and not replacing your spouse. I want to say that again. Two things here. You want to wait, you want to walk to see your relationship repaired instead of taking the mode of replacing your spouse. You see, if your mode in the relationship based on the crisis that you have in phase 1 is to replace your spouse, you will never be diligent enough, committed enough, hardworking enough, passionate enough to repair your relationship. I love what is happening in the world. When our cars get bad, we don't throw it away. We take it to the mechanic to fix it. Your television is wrong. You take it to mechanic to fix it. Your iPad has some problem. You didn't throw it away and fling it into the dustbin. You took it down to the repair and they are repairing it. How come that your relationship went bad and you are ready to fling the relationship away and you are not ready to repair it? You need to come to that mode wherein you said, I want to repair whatsoever that is wrong in this relationship. Let me take one more before I begin to get out here. The fifth one is self-adjustment. I think I dealt with self-adjustment last week. Self-adjustment. You need to have a self-adjustment. In other words, you are making the necessary adjustment in order to accommodate your spouse. Last week in episode 10, I took some time to tell you about the lessons in the driving school, wherein the first lesson they give you is to dim your headlamp light in the night. Because if you are in the full blast of your headlamp, you are ready to make accident, not because you are driving rough, but the vehicle coming in opposing direction is about to scratch you, is about to crash into you, because they can't see. They can't see not because of their own light, they can't see because the light and the brightness of your light is able to dazzle them. I want you to understand that you can adjust yourself. Self-adjustment. You can call it self-compromise. You are lowering your standards in order to pick your spouse who happens not to be in the same standard. You're dimming your light. You are lowering your standard. You're coming low in order to pick your spouse so that both of you will not stay on the floor, but both of you will go up to the top where both of you belongs. That's what Jesus did. He left. He is God, but he did not hold. He did not hold his equality with God, the man, by transformation and put him on the throne. And that's what your marriage is all about. That's what your marriage is all about. You see the flaws, you see the substandard, you see the mess that is upon your spouse. It's not a time to sign off. It's not a time to say, throw it off. It's a time of self-adjusting yourself. It is a time of stooping low and picking up your spouse. And I'll never forget this. I'll never forget this. I used to know a pastor who he was not even a graduate, but he married a very powerful woman, well-schooled, a director in a particular bank, and at the beginning, it was very rough. It was very rough because if this pastor opened his mouth to speak English, the wife will be embarrassed, especially when other CEOs are around. So she was embarrassed by the way the husband was speaking. She was ashamed of her husband. But she now decided to do something that worked. She began to take note of all the errors of the husband, especially when he's preaching. And in the bedroom, he began to teach the husband, make corrections, begin to repackage the man, begin to adjust him. Somebody saying to me that maybe because the man was teachable. Yes, I understand. You can't teach those who are not teachable. But if you are a woman of influence, and it was your influence that influenced your husband, because that's the power of influence that women have, you can influence your husband to learn again. It is all about how you present it. It is all about your approach. It is all about how you drive it. If you drive it as a boss, the man is going to resist your approach and resist even the good thing that you're bringing. But if you present it with the power of a woman, you are going to see that that man is going to do what you never thought that he would do. My time is over. I would have talked about adaptability. I think I mentioned it in the last episode, in episode 10. So I want you to see how you can go through the second phase of your marriage. And I say that is the most difficult phase because it is a time that you need to adjust yourself. It's called a shifting stage. You shift yourself so that your spouse can come in and be accommodated in your life. I believe that what we've done here today is really going to help you. And if you have further questions, don't forget to get down to our YouTube channel or go down to our website and send me an email in www.lifemending.org. Get down there, send me a message, drop your question, ask every question and explanation, and we will be glad to help you. Our vision is to help you to figure it out, to find a way out, to navigate against all odds, and be able to drive to your destination with the passion and the zeal of God in your life. I want to see you enjoy your marriage, because you were not married to endure marriage. You're married to enjoy marriage, and you will get to that marital bliss. Till I see you next week, is still life. It is still Caleb's, the coach of F.I.N D Relationship Platform. God bless you.